Welcome back to the second half of Night Talk, Get to the Point. Let me go ahead and reintroduce the Get to the Point panel for this week. I'm talking to Jasiri X, Pittsburgh-based rapper and community activist, founder of OneHood.org. I'm talking to the Reverend Ricky Burgess, councilman from District 9 here in the city of Pittsburgh, and I'm talking to Dr. Jason Johnson, professor of political science at Hiram College, also contributor to HLN, CNN, and Ebony.com, among others. Speaking of which, CNN.com, you took on the issue, Jason, of race, class, and division in America, based on the comments that Charles Barkley made in regards to the quote-unquote scumbags down in Ferguson. And I want to go ahead and just quote, if I may, just a little bit from that article, because I want to get to what the premise of what you were saying is, and I quote, Charles Barkley is a very, very rich man whose fame and celebrity have protected him from the kind of hostility and harassment from the police that thousands of other Americans, especially African Americans, experience every day. It's easy for Charles Barkley to lecture protesters and looters and mourning families about how to deal with anger. But most Americans can't diffuse a quote-unquote tense police situation with the aid of celebrity. Now, I don't find much fault with that statement. Right. But I also can point to instances. For example, we both know T.J. Holmes, driving while black. Tyler Perry, driving while black. We know the instances and the situations in New York. You and I have been in situations together at political events, and they think that we're more serving the food than actually giving political commentary, and you have a PhD in the field. Yeah. At what point in time is this about race versus class, number one? And I asked that previously, but more importantly, is this going to be the moment where the middle and upper classes of black America finally look at the lower socioeconomic levels of black America and say, we get it, it's time to get on board, and there's a reunification that we used to see 50 years ago?
I don't think there was as much of a split between middle class and rich black folk and poor black folk anyway. Okay. Most African Americans are 2 paychecks away from being back home with grandma anyway. We're really not that far along.
Well, especially now after the recession. Maybe the recession changed it, but we're talking about, even if you go back 10 years ago when some of these issues came up, some of the animus that came up, you start talking about James Byrd down in Texas in 1997. You start talking about the things that happened in New York City over the late 1990s, early 2000s. You didn't quite hear the same level of protest coming from the upper classes and those of affluence quite like you do now.
Well, I think part of that is, and again, you know, Charles Barkley being a bit of the anomaly, right? It's very easy for Charles Barkley, Raven-Symoné, Pharrell, whatever, people who've been rich for the vast majority of their lives who get protected from their idiotic behavior. And so it's very easy for them to lecture everybody on how they behave one way or another. The problem with that is not just a class issue, it's also a celebrity issue. It's also the fact that this person has absolutely no expertise in this area, and why are they even being given a forum to talk about it? I'd rather listen to Shaq. At least Shaq is a deputy. Shaq knows a little something about legal issues.
Law enforcement.
So yeah, law enforcement at least. You know, barely. But I think that this unification, or the idea that upper middle class African Americans and poor African Americans are bonding over these issues, I don't think that split has ever been that wide. And I do think that when you're hearing these conversations about, well, do I have to have the talk with my black son about dealing with the police? Middle class black folk have been saying that for years, because they're the ones growing up around white cops. If you're poor and you're used to being abused, you don't have to be told that. You don't have to be told to watch out what the cops are like when you live in certain neighborhoods. So
I wonder